Welcome back to Podcast Recovery, everyone. We're your hosts, David O.
And Carly R.
And today we're joined by our very good friend, Terri. How are you doing?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm doing well. Where are you from, Terri?
Wow. I'm literally from like 3 miles away from here.
Oh, okay.
I have lived my entire life within a mile of the same 5 mile stretch of Route 40.
Yeah.
Except for so it was Ellicott City and then Catonsville. Mm-hmm. And then for 3 marvelous years, I lived in Elk Ridge, which is like an additional 3 miles away.
Oh, I love Elk Ridge.
So yeah, I am from here. My house is walkable from here if we had sidewalks.
All right. And when were you first introduced to recovery?
I was first introduced to recovery when I was in college. Yes, I was in college. I was a relatively late bloomer, and I was first introduced to recovery. How did I? Oh, my friend, Lacey, who I was in high school with, she said, every time I talk to you, you're high and crying, and I think you might have a problem. I'm like, really? That's not normal?
Yeah.
She had been in AA for a year or so at this point. She's like, I want you to come to a meeting with me. And I'm like, really? She's like, yeah, you can, get drunk before you come if you want. You can use before I'm like, fabulous.
Yeah.
So, so she lived in Northern Virginia. So I drove down to Northern Virginia and,
drunk?
Impaired.
Okay.
Under the influence.
Okay.
There was a guy there.
Of course.
And so he was one of these very, he's going to make you understand how you're an addict, and I'm going to explain to you, and I'm going to ask you the questions that are going to draw it out of you. And he finally said to me, well, if you can quit using anytime you want to, you just don't want to, why don't you stop for 6 months? And I said, okay. So I did. Mm-hmm. And that was, I believe, February or March. I remember my 6 months ended in September because the day after my 6 months ended, I was at Hammerjack's yes, that's how old I am. Yep. I was at Hammerjack's trying to decide what I wanted to drink, and I realized I didn't want a drink. I wanted to be messed up. I wanted to be fucked up.
Of course.
So I didn't know what I wanted to drink because I just wanted to be fucked up anyway. So I went to a handful of AA meetings in DC, mostly the Midtown meeting. That was a big one back then. And I remember hearing people talk about a moral inventory. And the thing I remember the most was somebody talking about carrying the message and not the mess. Mm-hmm. And if I wait until I feel better to do the things that I need to do to feel better, I will die. Mm-hmm. So that was my first introduction. The highlight of that is knowing that when I was working at UMBC, one of the guys that I worked with, Alex, was in NA. And I think he did both, but I told him I was going to meetings. He's like, oh, that's interesting. So I went to a meeting with him and his wife, blah, blah, blah. Fast forward several years, I'm sitting outside of probably the Racerstown meeting in the parking lot. And here come 2 motorcycles, and it's Stuart and Alex. And Alex sees me sitting there and says, no shit. Because people don't generally accidentally end up in 12-step meetings.
Yeah, no. It's usually a pretty pointed thing.
So that was 92. Mm-hmm. And then I picked up again and quickly spiraled and was arrested for drunk driving in the spring of 95. Mm-hmm. Started counting my clean time in June of 95. And then about 2 years in, changed my clean date. Mm-hmm. So that's why I count from January of 96 now.
Okay. So January 1996. And that's my final question. So with all that out of the way, take it away. Share your story with us. Oh, God. What was that, Eric?
Nothing.
The Special Jeopardy music? I don't
Yeah,
know.
that was just...
We should cue that up for every time I say, start your story.
I love that.
That was actually a notification within the
I figured.
So.
Okay.
So, I feel weird. I'm an addict. My name is Terry. I feel like I have to start that way. It's very bad when you're in recovery for a long time because anytime you're in a situation where you have to introduce yourself, you have to remind yourself to not say that.
Yes.
Okay, so you've already heard the exciting beginning of my story. I came in on a court slip, and I've always been a goody-goody. I have a Capricorn moon for any of you horoscope people, any of you astrology people. So my Capricorn moon has always made me a goody-goody, a rule follower. I'm
a Capricorn moon.
I do what the teachers expect me to, and therefore am the teacher's pet.
Yeah.
So when they told me I had to get my court slip signed, I sat in every meeting where I got a court slip signed, and I don't tell anybody I told you, but there are ways around that. Anyway, so I went to...
I've been the dick, like, court slip signer that, like, if I saw somebody come drop in a court slip and they leave the meeting, I don't fucking sign it.
As well you should. That's absolutely the way you should do it.
Yeah.
But not everybody does.
Yeah, and he confronted me afterwards. I was like, you didn't sit in the fucking meeting. I was like, you were out in the parking lot. He's like, well, I have to get these signs. And I was like, that's your problem.
Then you need to sit in the meeting,
yeah,
dude.
I was like, that's your problem.
Welcome to accountability.
What if I got that guy arrested? That's terrible. Now I feel bad.
Anyway.
Okay.
Look, we all have to go through what we have to go through to get where we need to be.
Yeah. Maybe I helped him.
Maybe you were part of his process.
Probably.
Definitely helped him.
Yes, we'll go with
Maybe not right away, but
Thank you, Carter.
at some point.
Or he's in jail.
Hey, look, a consequence is a consequence.
Sometimes jail is helping.
A consequence is a consequence.
Yep. We digressed.
We digressed.
You were on a court slip.
I was on a court slip. And God was immediately working in my life, although I would not have defined it that way at first. Because when I was in outpatient recovery, I was doing all the court mandated things. Go to a victim impact panel, go to this many meetings a week, go to outpatient treatment. And outpatient treatment said go to 5 meetings a week. And I was like, oh, 5 meetings a week? When am I going to do that? I work out. I was a gym rat at this point. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I'm in the gym 5 days, 6 days a week and blah, blah, blah. And so my counselor's like, fine, you're going to fight me on it. Go to 3 meetings a week. And then in September, I went in front of the judge and the judge said, go to 5 meetings a week. And I said, alrighty then. So I did. I went to 5 meetings a week. I ended up joining a home group that one of the members was friends with my monitor, which is what we called probation officers when I was on probation with my monitor. So I kind of felt like he was...
This was AA?
No, this was NA because after I went to court, when they did my intake or whatever, the guy, Frank Turney, I still remember his name, asked me if... I asked him if I could go to NA instead of AA. And he said, well, why? I said, well, for one thing, alcohol is not my drug of choice. Mm-hmm. And for another thing, I don't think I said this out loud, but to myself, I said, there will be younger people in NA and it will be more interesting than AA. Yeah. So I asked if I could do NA and he said, sure. Okay. So that was how it started.
And real quick, what was your first drink? Do you remember?
100%.
Ooh. Schlitz.
No, worse. Another funny story. I talk a lot. You guys are going to have to cut a lot. Yeah, that's fine. My first drink was when I was in 9th grade. I was living in Catonsville in one of the row houses inside the Beltway on Frederick Road. And my friend Pam was over spending the night. And we called our friend Chip and told him that there were no parents, that we were spending the night and parents were out. He was
there in 2 seconds.
He's like, do you want me to bring something? And I'm like, sure. I had no idea what he was talking about. Mm-hmm. Bring something. Bring what? A yo-yo? I don't know. So he showed up with, and you guys won't remember these, but soda used to come in glass bottles that were about this big, and they kind of had a styrofoam label on them. They were little short, squat, barrel-shaped things that were made of glass still. And he brought one of those soda bottles full of dark rum. And I didn't know anything about mixing anything, so we were mixing it with Kool-Aid.
Oh, God. Rum and Kool-Aid?
Dark rum and Kool-Aid. And
terrible.
I ended up passing out in my very cool Def Leppard Union Jack shirt on which I had thrown up. Passed out in my vomit. And that was my first experience.
There's so many terrible things about that story.
Don't tell me that the Def Leppard shirt is one of the terrible things, because that's who I saw Tuesday night.
Well, we're not gonna go there then.
All right, we'll just skip right over that.
We're gonna skip right over that. We're back at Frank NA.
Okay. So yes, that was my first experience. And of course, because I have a Capricorn moon, I didn't know this at the time, but like I didn't do another drink or drug for like 2 years. I was completely paranoid. And then I don't really remember when I started just casually drinking. I do remember at one point, like 2 Mooseheads. We were drinking Moosehead back then, and 2 was the perfect amount. And very shortly, I was drinking more than 2 on a regular basis because that's what you do. And my mom used to keep a big bottle of Cella Lambrusco in the refrigerator.
I don't even know what that is.
It's wine.
Oh,
it's relatively, it's like box wine. It's the old school version of box wine. Okay, it's the old school version of box wine, but it was really sweet, so it was really good. And I used to drink some when I would get home from school, and then she would find me asleep on the couch, and she would say, "Do you have a drinking problem?" I'm like, "No, I had a glass of wine, and then I went to sleep. That's not a problem. Yeah. I'm in school. I'm allowed to do that." So, like, the clues were kind of there if you were looking for them, which I wasn't.
Yeah.
And I really didn't start getting high until the end of my senior year of high school. Mm-hmm. And we were doing the musical. I had finally tried out for the musical. That's another whole story. So I was in the musical with Billy Sachs. Perhaps you know him.
Yeah.
And
Bill Sachs was in a musical.
Bill Sachs was, not only was he in a musical, he had a speaking part with a name. I was a primary dancer.
Oh, wow.
I'm
going to have to bring this up to Bill.
He got to be one of, and he'll know who told you too.
Yeah.
He got to be one of the boys that married one of Tevye's daughters. So there you go.
So this was Fiddler on the Roof.
Yes, it was. Okay. And
I picked up that reference.
And in our final week, we did, like dress rehearsals and then shows. Mm-hmm. And that was the first time that I got high.
Drama nerds get down. You don't realize.
Oh, drama nerds are, because all the drama nerds are emo.
Exactly. But it's low key. Nobody
trying to figure out their sexuality.
Cast parties are super fun.
Cast party.
Oh my God. I went to a cast parties with the cast of Jesus Christ Superstar.
They suspect the jocks, but no, us drama nerds, we throw down.
I was never a drama nerd. So
no, I know.
Never went to cast parties.
And choir trips. Oh.
Went to an after show party with the cast of Jesus Christ Superstar at Toby's one night, and it was the bomb.
That's a way better story than the Def Leppard story.
One of the actors ended up coming home and spending the night in my bed in my mother's house when I was maybe in my 20s, but I don't even think I was that old. So, okay. That's a little more about my mom than you need to know. Where were we? Oh, yeah. So it was my senior week of high school. I got high and I discovered I loved being high, and coincidentally started spending all of my time with people who would get me high. Yep. Because at this point I wasn't buying my own. Yeah. Because I'm not that.
Women don't do that. I'm
not that bad. Yeah. And every time I go to a bar, I end up getting drunk. I don't have to spend $1. So I know it's the worst. And it just, that was just my life. Yep. I was a very low tolerance girl. I spent about, I smoked about a quarter a week, and it was about $45-50. God. Plus I was smoking everybody else's. Yeah. And it wasn't until, and my using wasn't very long. And this was one of the things that got me in trouble when I came into recovery. Mm-hmm. Because I tell my using story, very boring. Yeah. Not a lot of excitement, mostly funny. Never homeless, because I lived at my mom's house in her boyfriend's basement. Mm. So, and he made me it wasn't like I was in the basement. I was like, had my own bedroom, my own bathroom. Yeah. It was phenomenal. And the washing machine was down there, and I walked upstairs and bang, I was in the kitchen. So everything I needed was right there. And I worked part-time while I was in college. She asked me to start working after I graduated from high school. So I was working summers, and then I was working part-time. And finally I graduated from college, and I was working 30 hours a week at a gym and had a free gym membership. So in my mind, that was a 40-hour-a-week job. So that was a real job because I was working out at the gym. I was working at the gym. That was my job. That was my life. So it was gym tan, pot. Gym tan bong hits.
Yeah.
Gym tan bong hits. So
that should be the title, Eric. Gym tan bong hits. That's a great title to the episode.
So gym tan bong hits because, of course, it didn't take me long to figure out that joints were a waste of pot. And as soon as I learned how to do bong hits and figured out where to buy one, I think my cousins may have given me one.
Did Piece of Sunshine still exist back then?
I don't recognize the name.
I don't think so.
So Piece of Sunshine opened in like 2006, maybe, because I remember Larry offered me a job when it opened.
Because we had to come up here because Howard County wouldn't deign to have a head shop in their county.
No, that opened up while I was like first or second year of college.
Well, shoot, you only needed to go down to Fells Point to get what you needed if you really...
Well, this is closer than Fells Point. I grew up in Howard County.
Howard County. God, and I thought I was a county girl growing up in Catonsville.
No.
Yeah, so anyway. I remember... And these milestones were really memorable to me. I remember the first time that I was planning to go on vacation and actually bought weed while I was on vacation because I felt bad smoking all of the weed of the people's house that I went to. Yeah. I'm like, I should probably buy my own. So when they had their guy come over, I bought some. My story's very boring, very boring. The problem was that I also have depression and in 93 started taking antidepressants. And did shots while on antidepressants. And that was what got me in trouble.
Yep. That'll fuck you up real quick.
Don't know how much of your audience is familiar with the combination of psychoactive drugs and alcohol, but it's a potent one. And that's what got me in trouble. I hadn't gotten to the point yet. Well, that's a lie. I wasn't doing many degrading things to make sure I had my drug of choice. Mm-hmm. I wasn't hanging out with especially sketchy people, any more sketchy than I might normally hang out with. Mm-hmm. Generally, my dealer was my friend, and I went to her house and got what I needed. So my story is very pedestrian. Yeah. It's very unexciting.
You don't seem like you mess with too many unsavory characters. You probably most of your dealers, you knew, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. See, I was doing all sorts. Eric was definitely doing
for the most
shit.
part, or maybe that I didn't directly know, but somebody.
Yeah, a friend of a friend.
A really good friend of mine knew.
Oh, I would meet up with total fucking strangers.
No, my drug dealer was nice enough to where he came up. I think I got I don't know what, my car was, I was at Shaq's one time, and my car, I couldn't go pick up the drugs from him, so he came and he fixed my car.
Oh my god! That's
right on.
That's the best drug dealer ever. Holy
pretty awesome. Right on.
Damn.
Yeah, one of my drug dealers was a local musician who.
Oh, of course he was.
Nobody was synth music. Okay, it was wild.
He was playing a guitar.
He may have been. He did kind of look like one of the guys in the Hooters. And. Stan, I probably shouldn't say his last name. But anyway, Stan, who knew one of the guys in boot camp, so he was super cool. References way before any y'all's time. Yeah. But he told me a story about how the cops came knocking down his door with guns and battering rams and things, and I continued to show up at his apartment and purchase from him. Little signs like that say perhaps you're in over your head. Yeah. Miss Capricorn Moon. Mm. Maybe you ought to stay at home in the county. So my story was boring. I was on antidepressants, told the counselor, I'm going to Europe this summer. I'm totally going to drink when I'm in Europe. If you think I'm not, we're kidding ourselves. Yep. So put me on a really low dose. Yeah. And I never intended to quit drinking or quit using. Yeah. I remember asking the guy when they were going to test my levels on my antidepressant, I said, is that all you're checking for? Because I knew that there'd be pot. Yeah. If they were checking. So I was aware that I was doing something that wasn't according to the rules. Yeah. But I did it in the most Capricorn Moon way I possibly could. I did cocaine once the night I graduated from high school.
You mean once an hour or just
one time, one evening?
Do you get that? Mm-mm. I don't understand that.
I did cocaine one time.
Give me all the cocaine.
I loved it.
Yeah.
and never did it again. Just never got to hang out with people who did cocaine. The
Make
acid.
friends with those people. I'm
Okay.
kidding. Everybody out there, do not make friends with
Do not F those people.
It's going to go bad very fast.
Anytime I did acid, I made sure somebody else had taken some from that batch first and not died.
Not the brown
Not
acid.
died.
You weren't taking the brown acid?
I was not taking the brown acid.
That's good.
You know, I did acid a handful of times. I was always with the same people, one of whom was in love with me, so he always kept me safe. I knew I was protected. You know, so we always had a trip manager, trip minder.
Yeah.
Did mushrooms a couple of times. I mean, my story, not interesting. Like, the acid wasn't even that good anymore. Although I was at a Grateful Dead show, and that was kind of cool.
Yeah. In the 80s?
No, 91.
Oh, okay.
91.
Okay.
My cousin got me a cassette.
So Terri was still alive?
Yeah, yeah. My cousin, for my birthday that year, got me a cassette of that show. It was pretty cool.
Nice.
My cousin, the Deadhead, who still goes to
A
Delfest.
cassette. For any young kids, that's a primitive form of listening to music. That's what a cassette tape is.
The youth will never know what a complete waste of resources the cassingle was.
Yeah, tune in next week. We're going to go over the VHS. Thank you.
Anyway.
Okay, so now you're in recovery.
So now I'm in recovery. And I'm going to the meetings as told I need to. And of course, Catonsville is a very big, small town.
Yeah.
So the first meeting I went to was at the Epic House. I don't know if the Epic House was still around, still open when you guys came around. But
just barely.
was at the Epic House and ran into somebody I went to high school with. And then the next time I was there, ran into a guy who was really good friends with one of my really good friends. And he's like, Terri, what are you doing here? I'm like, shut up. You know what I'm doing here. I got caught. I got busted. Just for the record, was pulled over with a blood alcohol content of 0.2, taken several hours after I got stopped. I was not conscious, but I was still operating a motor vehicle. So that tells you what my tolerance was.
That's ridiculous.
Right?
Good God.
Yeah.
0.2.
0.2.
Wow. Okay.
Just wanted to get that in there. Point of pride. Don't be proud of that. That's not a thing to be proud of.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm in recovery. I'm going to meetings and I'm listening to the war stories.
Yes.
And you guys are telling amazing war stories. And in the moments when I'm trying to take this seriously, I'm like, I don't belong here. I never did dope. I never put a needle in my neck. I never went to jail. I never lived under a bridge, blah, blah, blah. I don't belong here. And, you know, I kept hearing, listen for the similarities, not the differences, and don't try to compare out, try to compare in. But the other side of me was thinking, you know, I'm going to do this for 3 years while I'm on probation, and then I'm going to stop doing this, and I'm going to have a big party and not invite any of these people because I'm not an addict. I don't have a problem.
Yeah.
Even though in my heart of hearts, I kind of knew that wasn't true.
Yeah.
I just didn't care. My life was specifically designed so that I could use when I wanted to use and still bring money home. At this point, I had stopped working at the gym. I was waiting tables, cash money.
Yeah.
Waiting tables. Oh, yes. Did I mention there was a bar there? So the shift drink became a shift pitcher. And, you know, there it is. So I'm going to meetings and I'm hearing people talk about God, and I'm a philosophy major. So do not talk to me about God. I've taken comparative religion. I'm not interested. Maybe you guys need God. The other thing, the good news about the Capricorn moon is that I respected that you guys needed this program. I respected that there was serious...
That's kind of a condescending way to go about it. Like, oh, I understand you need it, but I don't.
That's because she's a Capricorn. Like,
Oh,
being
okay.
a Capricorn is all about being
Well,
kind.
Capricorn and college educated. Oh, yes, working on my master's degree.
It explains a lot more about you, Eric.
So I'm actually a Capricorn in both. So my sun and
You're a sun and moon.
Sun and moon.
Ooh, tough combination.
I don't know. All I know
And
is
then
I'm a Virgo.
I'm actually a cusp on my sun, so I'm Aquarius as well.
I am Sag,
Okay.
Sun,
That
Capricorn,
makes
cusp.
sense.
Okay.
Allie's all into this
I
whole.
do know. Yeah, Carly's a Pisces, so that makes sense.
Yes, Cap Sun, cusp. I mean, Sagittarius Sun, cusp, Capricorn, Capricorn Moon, Gemini rising.
So Capricorn sun.
I don't
cusp,
know.
Aquarius.
They're speaking Chinese. Stay in your corner, Wizard of Oz. Get behind your curtain. You're done.
The first time I truly understood what all of those things meant was when I saw the meme that equated astrological signs with fast food restaurants.
Okay.
Because it was completely bang on. Eric, look it up. It's bang on, and I completely understood it.
Okay. I'm gonna look that up.
Probably does make a lot of sense.
Anyway, coming to meetings, listening to war stories, going, wow, you dudes are fucked up. But I understood that I needed to be respectful of the process that was happening there, because I understood that the 12 steps were changing people's lives. I just didn't understand that my life,
Jesus,
just put that anywhere.
Yeah, God.
I didn't understand that my life was one that needed to be changed by the 12 steps, or that could be changed by the 12 steps. I didn't think it would work for me.
Yeah.
I didn't think it would work for me. And I remember, once I'd been coming around for a while, and I could tell you guys were talking about real stuff, because there was a lot of crying and a lot of emotions and a lot of hugging. And I got that the time from prayer to prayer was a sacred space. I'm all about spirituality and have been a seeker my whole life. And so I got that something special and magical was happening in these rooms between prayer and prayer.
Yeah.
I just didn't think I was eligible for it.
Yeah.
Because God is not, God and the Tooth Fairy are right on the same level in my pantheon.
Mm-hmm.
So
They both give you money.
They both give me money.
No, wait, no.
So
God takes your money.
Wait,
God
so Santa
totally
is above
opposite.
God?
Okay, well, see, here it is.
Because Tooth Fairy is below Santa Claus, but you're saying God and the Tooth Fairy are on the same level. Is Santa above?
I grew up in a religious household in that my mother was Jewish, my dad was Episcopalian, I think. He was some flavor of Christian, and we celebrated any holiday that had to do with food or money.
Okay, so you celebrate the capitalistic holiday of Christmas.
Absolutely.
Wonderful.
Yes.
That's all I need to know.
Absolutely. Had a tree very tastefully decorated with white garland and red satin balls. Before my Jewish mother discovered her inner Christmas elf and now puts up a ridiculous amount of Christmas trees with every known ornament possible to man.
I'll total sidetrack real quick. I love the tradition of Judaism, though. Like, they have such a beautiful heritage.
No, that's wonderful. Everything you're saying is great, but she just mentioned trees. So how many Christmas trees are in your mother's house?
There's one in the big one is in the back room, and that's the one with all the best ornaments.
Okay.
There's one in the front room
The Ravens one.
tree.
that I believe was the bell tree, and that's the one that I reach in and I shake because all the ornaments are bells.
And then all the angels get wings.
And then all the angels get wings. There is one in the dining room. It's a tabletop tree. That's the travel tree. It's got all the ornaments from all the places they've been.
No, my one grandmother does this. There's like 6 fucking trees in her house. I'm like, why do you need all?
There used to be a tree in the bedroom that was the gold ornament tree.
Are they real trees?
The big one used to be, now they're all fake. You got to remember, my mom is 76, her husband is 70, so they're doing it the easy way. Now, they redid their back room, and they built this closet that will eventually be their clothing closet, but right now is their Christmas closet. So they just wheel the tree into, my Jewish mother, thank you, wheel the tree into the closet with the lights still on it.
Christmas is for everyone. It is not.
Christmas is for everyone, and my mom did it really well. Her birthday is December 2nd. So
a good Jewish woman would do Christmas amazing.
And so we celebrate Thanksgiving and put the tree up, and we do like Thanksgiving and her birthday, and all the family comes over and decorates her tree. So for her birthday, her tree is decorated in front of her, and she's a happy lady.
Oh, that's nice.
Okay, how did we digress? Where did we
God and the Tooth Fairy.
God and the Tooth Fairy. Okay.
So so God wasn't a thing for me, and then. Like, I kind of heard you guys saying, your higher power can be what you need to be. Don't call it God, call it a higher power, call it a group of drug addicts, call it the great outdoors, call it good orderly direction, whatever.
I know great outdoors, G-O-D. Holy fuck.
Actually got that one later. Yeah.
I just got
like that.
I was today years old.
That one, if I had gotten that one earlier in my recovery, it might not have taken so long.
Yeah.
What, the great outdoors?
Yeah.
Have you heard that before, Eric?
No, but I just put it together, so I was today years old too.
Yes, that is fantastic. Everybody use the great outdoors for your God.
So the great outdoors was my higher power in a very literal way.
Yep.
One night when I was totally fucked up down at the beach with a bunch of my friends, and they would not stop listening to fucking Pearl Jam for the 100th time. So I ran down to the beach and I was sobbing because I was fucked up. So I was sobbing and I was like, nothing I ever do will ever be as beautiful as the ocean or as beautiful as the sky. And
I can see this.
As you do. And a voice, something came to me and said, You were created by the same thing that created the sky.
Mm-hmm.
You were created by the same thing that created the ocean. The only reason you don't think you're as beautiful as you think that stuff is because of your perspective.
Mm.
It's your perception. Yep. It's not reality.
Yep.
I mean, that was my first God moment in a very real sense.
Mm-hmm.
I held on to that.
Yeah.
So, and I ended up using a group of drug addicts as my higher power because I could tell your lives were changing. I had been coming around long enough. I had made friends. I had made a very tight, good friend, walking buddy, Terri H. And she was exactly like me. She was, a great student. She was, a law student. She went to law school. So she had a law degree and she was an addict and she's still out there using after having 9 years clean. So anyway, so I knew that your lives were changing. I knew you guys were talking about serious stuff. And I had seen more than once tattooed guys with long hair and chains that came in on motorcycles standing in front of the room talking about their feelings.
Yeah.
So I knew that something was going on here.
Yeah.
This is going to take way longer than 20 minutes. I need to fast forward. So I knew that something was going on here and I needed to respect it. Mm-hmm. Even if I didn't think it applied to me.
Yeah.
And I know, I knew that it applied to me. And I don't remember when I finally just dropped the mask and said, okay, I'm an addict. I don't remember when I think I started introducing myself as an addict to make other people comfortable. I don't know when I finally surrendered and said, yes, I'm an addict. I belong here. I think my first important surrender was when I changed my clean date. I had used June 13th as my original clean day because that was when I started coming to meetings, but I was still working in bars at this point, and I was, eating a cherry out of somebody's whiskey sour or taking a sip of Zima and Chambord because nobody had Zima and Chambord when I was drinking.
Nobody should ever have Zima and Chambord.
Fair enough. But I never tasted it, so I wanted to taste it. Yeah. And to me, that wasn't using because I wasn't doing a bong hit.
Yeah.
I was taking a sip.
Yeah.
And I finally, and I was very honest with my sponsors and honest.
It wasn't a full line. I was just doing a bump. It's fine, right?
I was just smelling it.
Yeah. I was just
So.
The smell test.
So I was very honest about it and people said, okay, keep coming back. And finally a sponsor said to me, look, if I took a needle and filled it up with 5% heroin and the rest water and shot it, am I using? And I said, well, yeah. She's like, what's the difference?
Yeah.
Miss Philosophy.
Yeah.
Oh, all right. So I changed my clean date. It was at somebody's anniversary. I remember somebody was celebrating and I announced that I needed to change my clean date and everybody went, because I had 2 years clean. And whenever anybody says that,
everybody saw the fucking light bulb.
They're picking up a 1-day key tag when people say that I have to change my clean date. And I'm like, I don't have to pick up a 1-day key tag, but I think I need to pick up 18 months because I don't really have 2 years clean. So I figured out the math. When did I stop working at the bar job? Mm-hmm. When was my last paycheck dated? Take it a week after that. Bam. So my clean date is January 20th. So I knew I belonged here. I just didn't think I needed to do it the way you guys needed to do it. I didn't think I needed to follow all the directions. Of course I got into a relationship before I had a year clean. Of course I dated people. I had a sponsor. I worked steps. I came to meetings. And then I found a spiritual path that I got really involved with that was very time consuming. Mm-hmm. And for about a decade, I was coming to like one meeting a week, my home group. Mm-hmm. And I was calling my sponsor once a month, maybe to let her know what was going on. Yeah. And going, doing my spiritual thing on the side all the time.
What was your spirituality?
I was in a coven. It was an NECTW coven. Yeah. And so, of course, every SBOT, every Sabbath, 8 holidays a year, 13 full moons. That's a lot. It's a lot of time consuming. Plus, you got to copy the book and you got to make your little robe and sew your little things. I mean, there's a lot going on there.
Yes.
And I had an amazing social experience and I learned a lot of stuff and made some really great friends. Yeah. But I didn't get the spirituality I was looking for. Okay. Like, I wanted something. Maybe this will explain why I use drugs. I wanted something that was going to affect me without my permission.
You wanted magic.
That's exactly what I wanted.
Yeah.
I wanted magic. And I read a book about a woman who was into witchcraft who talked about feeling the roots of the tree from, embedding themselves in the earth. Mm-hmm. And that was what I wanted. And I didn't get that from that. So I eventually stopped going to the coven. Before that, though, I don't remember how all the timing worked. I was in the coven for about 10 years. But the woman who was my sponsor at this point was very Buddhist. Mm-hmm. So it was a spirituality I could work with and understand. She was very smart. Yeah. Loved her. Did like a step a year before my anniversary. So I could say I did a step, celebrated my anniversaries. Yeah. And then when she had 20 years clean, my sponsor relapsed. And that was the nuclear explosion I needed in my recovery. Yeah. Because when she relapsed, I knew that I was eligible. Mm-hmm. I knew that I was, if it could get her, she's smart. The disease wasn't even tricky with her. Yeah. It was pain meds. Mm-hmm. She had told her sponsor when she got the first script filled. So when she went back for the second one, she's like, I don't need to tell my sponsor. She already knows that I'm taking these. When she went on vacation with her family, all of whom are in recovery, and her daughter-in-law found the bottle that she was hiding. She said she was hiding it from her daughter because you know how she gets when she finds out I'm taking pain meds. Yeah. So she's, hiding, lying, not talking about it with her sponsor. Yeah. And of course, it wasn't long before she wasn't taking it as prescribed. And then she told everybody she had used. Yes. And that...
Let me get that door real quick. Sorry, everybody. There's baby crying.
Oh, no, the door's already shut.
Oh, the door's shut?
The door's shut. That's just a loud baby. That baby is hungry.
That is a loud baby.
That baby is hungry. So I was out with my sponsor and her sponsor at Paper Moon. Mm-hmm. And we were having dinner. And my grand sponsor put her hand on my arm and said, I will be your sponsor until you find another sponsor. Mm-hmm. And I said, fabulous. She's still my sponsor today. Nice. This was 2014. Mm-hmm. And I immediately took the program seriously in a way that I never had before. Mm-hmm. I immediately did exactly what she told me to do. She said, what step are you on? I said, I'm on my second round of steps. I'm on my 9th step. And how are your amends going? Well, really right now, I'm just mostly making amends to myself. And she laughed. She said, okay, that's fine. We'll get back to that. How many meetings are you going to? And I'm like, 1 or 2. She's like, okay, well, now you're going to 5. Okay. Now I had 2014. I had a significant number of years clean. I wasn't a brand newcomer, but my recovery was
lacking,
tenuous at best. So I did what she told me to do, and I was legitimately scared because at this point I had gotten to that point that you hear people talk about where it's not about using, it's about killing yourself. Mm-hmm. I was stuck in my life. Yep. I was stuck. I was still unhappy. Mm-hmm. I had been clean for over a decade, and I was doing the things I thought, I have family that loves me. I have friends. I've got all the things. I've got a good job. I own a house. Yeah. Why am I still unhappy? Yep. And I talked to my sponsor about that, Robin, who is my sponsor today, and she suggested that perhaps outside help was in order, and she sent me to an outside help place, and I went there, and it changed my life. Yeah. But it wouldn't have been able to change my life if I hadn't been clean first. Mm-hmm. And ever since then, I have finally, I actually did all the 12 steps. I wrote the 12th step for the first time, which I had never actually done. So now I can say...
When did the step working guide become a thing?
The step working guide became a thing pretty early after I got clean.
Okay, so early 2000s.
Yeah.
Late 90s.
Yeah, late 90s, early 2000s.
I didn't think it was that old.
But the first time that I did my steps, or when I did my steps the first time through with my first sponsor, the sponsor I did it. I wasn't even that. I did it in a different book completely. It was like a completely different 12-step book. It might have been a Hazelden book of some kind. I don't even remember what it was. Somebody gave it to me and said, don't let this book scare you. I'm like, whatever.
Was it like Necronomicon?
No. There was no Aleister Crowley anywhere in it.
That's a great name. That's a great reference.
Thank you. So, Def Leppard, Ozzy Osbourne, not that many steps in between. 6 degrees doesn't take that long.
Okay.
So No, I'm not neither here nor there. So, when I was celebrating,
whenever somebody does that, you immediately are.
No, because it's digression. There's great stories, but it's all digression.
Okay.
So, the first time I did my 12th step, I was sharing my anniversary, and I said, I've worked my first 11 steps. I haven't worked my 12th step, and then my sponsor shared and said, you're celebrating, you're working your 12th step right now. And then when I did my first step over again, I went to her and she said, oh, I've used. You might want to get a new sponsor. So that was my first experience with the 12th step. Mm-hmm. In that time, I went through this process. I worked the 12 steps as suggested, wrote them all, started sponsoring people, and my life is different today. Mm-hmm. And my life is so different today that when the pandemic happened and quarantine happened, I was really scared because I'm about isolation. I'm about, if I'm home, I don't want to go out anymore. Once I'm in, I'm in.
Yeah.
I don't want to talk to anybody. Don't want to bother anybody. Don't want to, and then wonder why I'm not getting invited to things. Well, maybe it's because you don't call anybody and you don't go anywhere. But so I worked with my sponsor on a plan for, I live at home by myself. I'm now in this house with my cat, so I'm going to work from home. How am I not going to go insane?
Yeah.
And as we know now, the 12-step fellowships immediately started doing virtual meetings, so there was no excuse not to be in a meeting. Plus, my yoga community went virtual, and I could do my yoga classes virtually. So between my family and my neighborhood, which I got much closer to because that was all the walking I did when I could get out of the house. That was the only place I went, but I live right by the park. Yeah. Yay! So it was fabulous. So I had my community, I had my my family, I had the 12-step community, I had my yoga community, and then I had sponsees calling me.
Yeah.
So, and I was also RCM for the West Side area at that point. So, and service, the regional meetings went, and area service went virtual. So I was involved when the pandemic happened. I was in the middle.
Yeah.
And the 2 years since the pandemic happened have literally been the best 2 years of my life. I'm the oldest I've ever been. I am looking at retiring in the next 5 years from a government job, which is not the pension it used to be, but it's something. Plus I have a 401k.
Yeah.
I could tell you the long Hallmark movie version of how my boyfriend and I got back together. We dated like 15 years ago. Timing was wrong. He lived in Ohio. I lived here. Mm-hmm. He was raising his daughter and wasn't going to move here because her co-parent was in Ohio. Mm-hmm. Fast forward, he quit drinking because he didn't like the way drinking was affecting. Check this out. He didn't like the way the consequences of drinking were affecting his life. Like he wasn't showing up for commitments. He would say he was going to do a 7 a.m. bike ride. And then he would drink the night before and not show up. Yeah. And he didn't like that. So he quit drinking.
Oh.
Right?
That's a thing?
Right?
That's a choice we can make? I didn't know.
I'm like, what? He says to me, I drink exactly as much as I want to every day.
Eric, write that down. Apparently we can stop drinking. Just.
And I say.
On our own volition.
Just like
just on a whim. Apparently that's the thing. I didn't know. Okay. Write it down.
He says, I drink exactly as much as I want to every day. And I say, fuck you. That's why you're not a junkie.
Yeah.
You might be an alcoholic, but you ain't a junkie.
Yeah.
Because I, of course, would still get high today in a second if I didn't fear the consequences.
Yep.
But he doesn't get it.
No.
Like he gets that I need it, but his mind doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
So anyway, so he sold his house in Toledo and he lives at my house now with his dog. Mm-hmm. So, for the first time since I've had like 5 years clean, I'm actually living with another person and I'm in a relationship and still have sponsees and still going to be not doing service because I started doing a different educational program. So I needed the time and I couldn't make regional service anymore.
You don't have to explain not doing service.
No, but I think service is really important, and I think there's a reason why service is one of the sides of the pyramid, one of the four sides of the pyramid. Yeah. There is a reason. Service. If your service is lacking, you will not get the freedom, and that's the whole thing about when people give out medallions, they do the thing wrong, and it makes me crazy. as soon as somebody says rises to a point of goodwill and freedom, I stop listening to anything they say because they're completely wrong. Because goodwill is at the bottom. You have to have that first.
Yes.
You have to have goodwill first.
Mhm.
And then you work on yourself. You work on your place in society. You do service. You get a relationship with God. And if you get all those things working together, it will meet at a point of freedom.
That's actually the best explanation I've ever heard. I've never really thought of it as those layers on the way up.
And all of it is encircled by a circle around the outside of the pyramid because we are about addiction. We're not about a specific drug.
Yes.
We're about the behavior of addiction.
Yep.
And we have room for whatever you're powerless over.
Mm-hmm.
Come.
Yep.
We have room.
Yep.
So there you go. That's the circle with the pyramid and the sides and the point.
Fantastic. All right. Well, we definitely, that was a perfect end. So, all right. We definitely have some questions for you. Carly, would you like to go first?
Yes.
Fantastic.
No, go ahead.
Oh, okay.
I was just throwing you off.
Yeah.
I love that.
All right. I want to go back to 2014 a little bit because I was early in recovery, and I vaguely remember you talking about that in meetings. I remember you crying in meetings.
Yeah?
Yes.
Okay, so if I was still crying, I'm going to get off mic for a second because I'm reaching for chapstick. Okay, if I was still crying in meetings in 2014, that should have been a sign that maybe there was something lacking in my recovery.
Yes, but I was early in recovery, and 2014 was a very emotional year for me, and it really gave me validation that I can cry in meetings.
Oh, good.
And
absolutely.
because I had always really felt weird about it, but 2014 I really owned it, and I was like, if I'm gonna fucking cry, I'm gonna cry.
Right on.
And you've carried that with you?
Yes,
The whole way.
Uh-huh.
Shut up, Eric. I swear to God. But no, the subject matter, you were not afraid to talk about depression in the rooms. And so and here at Podcast Recovery, we don't really believe in outside issues. Whatever affects your life to a point of driving you to using, it's not an outside issue. And depression is one of those things, and it's always sort of been a sensitive subject in the rooms. But how important is it to talk about your mental health in the rooms and have it be more open?
I can't tease apart what part of my life getting better is attributable to therapy and medication and, being treated for my depression, and how much is attributable to the 12 steps and being in recovery. How do I tease that apart?
Yeah.
I'm not going to do a big experiment and do one without the other. I did one without the other. Guess what? It didn't work. I'm still here. And I have weaned off medication and changed medications in recovery. So I have had the experience of that, and it was horrible.
Yeah.
So I know that I need to treat both of my diseases, and I need to treat them every single day. And I'm only as good as my vigilance. I'm only as healthy as the things I've been doing to keep myself feeling good. If I wait until I feel good to do the things that are going to help me feel good, I'm going to die.
Yeah.
I have to do the things anyway. And so I tried. I found a meeting that was a dual diagnosis, depression and NA meeting. And mostly I couldn't not talk about it because that's who I am.
Yeah.
I believe that there are people who are addicts who don't fight with mental illness.
Yes.
And you see those people come in and put the drugs down and get a higher power, and their lives explode with magnificence. I can name a couple of people like that.
Yeah, totally.
And then there are people who come in and get clean and get a higher power and do the thing, and they're still struggling. Because I think there's a great big overlap between mental illness and addiction. We're self-medicating. That's what we're doing.
Yep.
So if people were going to have a hard time with that, they were going to have to come and tell me about it.
Yeah.
And I was going to talk to my sponsor. My sponsor was going to say, you talk about what you need to talk about. I can't tease apart because I've known I was depressed longer than I've known I was an addict.
Yeah.
like my whole life. I was thinking about death when I was in elementary school. I mean, the kid was thinking deep thoughts.
Yes.
Very heavy thoughts. So I couldn't talk about one without the other because I didn't know how to tease them apart.
Awesome. All right, Carly.
Maybe I should have gone first because you stole my question right out from under me.
Better.
I asked.
Yeah, I know, but it's always a rhetorical question. You don't actually mean for me to go first.
I know. But I do.
It's so nice that you guys can see each other coming.
Yeah. Oh, totally. And like, it's sort of been a running gag because it's just like, David, we know you want to go first. I'm like, no, I genuinely don't, but you do.
But you do.
Yes. It would mess the whole thing up if I went first.
Then we'd ruin the gag and it wouldn't be funny and we'd lose viewers. That's what they come for.
You talked a lot about your story being boring and when you first came in the rooms being told to listen for similarities. So how were you able to compare in?
First by the feelings.
You stole my next question.
Hey!
Well played, lady.
I remember being at a meeting, I think at St. Bart's, and I don't know if you want me to name names, but I can tell you who the speaker was. Danny Smith, who is a thin black man from the city, told my story, and he was talking all about feelings. And I heard him, and I got it. Yeah. And I was like, okay, it's not about what or how much you used or who your connections were or how much or how little you have. It's about how we feel. And you hear people over and over again say it's a disease of the feelings. You know, my feelings were not matching my reality. And I heard him tell his story, and it was also the guys with the long hair and the tattoos and the chains who were talking about their feelings. You know, I kind of got it that it wasn't about whether or not I put a needle in my neck or did time or what tier I was on or what bridge I lived under. It was about the way that I felt about myself. And so that was it. I heard somebody tell my story, and it was somebody who didn't look like me and didn't grow up like me. So then I knew, oh, okay, that's what it's about.
Yeah. So you talked about Bill, and he's obviously one of us now, Billy Sachs.
Yes.
Yeah. So throughout your recovery, especially like being in recovery in the area you grew up with, obviously you've seen a lot of people come and go. How difficult is it to, because over a long period of time, watch those people come and like just sort of scrape along the bottom, or some people leave the program? How do you deal with those sort of relationships and loving them from a distance?
It's actually really interesting. You know, people talk about going to a lot of funerals. I don't really go to a lot of funerals. And I don't want to sound like, I mean, this is going to sound pompous and arrogant, and I'm not coming from that place. But the people that I spend the most time with don't relapse. Yeah. They do service. They have decades clean. They show up. So like Bill, I've known since I was in high school. Yeah. We were friends. We have some common friends, but we weren't incredibly tight. Yeah. You know, like he was one of Vanessa's best friends. And so I was friends with him because he was friends with Vanessa. And, you know, we're tighter now because of what he's been through and because I was one of the people that was here for him when he came back. Yeah. Sherry, the girl I mentioned early on, who relapsed when she had 9 years clean, I still consider her my best friend, but she never did come back, and she's still drinking, and she's married and has kids, and her life has gone on. And every once in a while we get together and she drinks a couple of beers, and I try not to have a feeling about it. Yeah. Because God damn it, we're having dinner together. You can't not drink for 2 hours. Yeah. But you know, my recovery is my responsibility, not hers. And I love her, but I don't spend any time with her. Yeah. It's so funny. I just had a dream about somebody we lost, Brian McLeod. Oh, okay. I had a dream about him last night. And I, you know, just all the fucking feelings. Like, you son of a bitch. Yeah. You know, how can you not know? You have 2 children.
Yeah, that one took me by surprise.
Because he would stay clean for 4 years and then use, and then still have a business and still have a truck and still have his daughters and come back into the rooms and stay clean for 2 years and then use, and then still have, and, you know, he got cocky. He kept thinking, well, you know, I can use, I can always come back. He had the best sponsor in the world.
Yeah.
And now he's dead. And I'm like, you son of a bitch.
Yeah.
How dare you? Which of course made me think about Shaggy.
Yep.
And that's like the people who force their way into your heart without your permission and then go back out. Those are the ones that piss me off. And there's a point, I guess, in relationships where, you know, I'm going to have a relationship with you as long as you're in recovery. But when you're not in recovery anymore, I may reach out to you, I may talk to you, I may say hi to you in the store, but I'm not going to call you and make plans with you. But there are other people that I have a relationship with who are going to be in my life, whether they're using or not. And I guess that's just an individual thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, one of my very best friends, it was the girl who I used to buy from. We're still very best friend. We're still very close. You know, best friends is a tier, as Mindy Kaling says. It's not a position. It's a tier.
Yes.
And so one of my other best friends, you know, is still, we don't hang out as much as we used to. We talk all the time. But, you know, if I needed her, she'd be there. And if she needs me, I'd be there. And so, yeah, sometimes relationships are about the fact that we're all in recovery together. And then sometimes they're not anymore. Yeah. So it's a case-by-case basis is the answer.
Awesome. Carly, you're my bestie and I love you.
I love you too.
Okay. Good. All right. What's your next question?
Has your addiction manifested itself in your recovery? And how?
Really? You wanted to ask me that when I had a mouthful of coffee?
Yes.
You guys, I know you both have heard me say in meetings, if you're confused about whether or not I'm an addict, follow me down the candy aisle in the grocery store the day after a major holiday and watch how many things that say Reese's I pull into my cart.
All of them.
Sugar and food in general, spending money, you know, shopping, the little light goes on. I can't even say sex anymore because I'm past menopause, and as soon as the estrogen went, so did my sex drive. So it's very sad. It's horrible. Do get old because it's better than dying, but oh my God, estrogen therapy. But yeah, I mean, just, you know, in having over the top reactions to things, in, you know, obsessing about Hamilton or,
we were just talking about that, Eric.
I was obsessed with the Hamilton trash before I became Hamilton trash. It's a whole big thing, you know. Being obsessed, spending money, eating food. One of the things that happened to me during the pandemic was I lost about 40 pounds. I lost about 50 and I put 10 back on. So, and of course everybody saw me after a year and went, oh, are you okay? Are you ill? Are you well? I'm like, no, I'm fine. But I was one of the only people that lost weight during the pandemic. Yeah. And everybody says, how did you do it? Well, I counted every single calorie and I felt every single feeling. Ugh. And it was horrible.
Write that down too, Eric. You can feel your feelings. Remember that one, buddy.
and so, you know, I discovered exactly how much I was using food to change the way I felt because like the drugs stop working, food never stops working. No. Sugar will always knock me out if I need it to.
And I'll tell you what, tears on your steak is just sublime.
An accessory and a condiment, just like pet hair.
Yeah, totally.
So that's why it's very important to me to remember that, you know, people talk about when you were in active addiction. Like, I'm still in active addiction. My addiction is plenty active. It's just not coming out in drug use. I still have to do the recovery stuff every day. I have to go to meetings. I have to work my steps. I have to talk to my sponsor. I have to do the things I need to do for my mental health, which I treat as an aspect of recovery because we talk about the disease being mental, physical, and emotional, or whatever the three things are.
Yeah, we're recovering from
spiritual, mental, and physical. So I go for a walk every day to get my blood flowing, to get the endorphins going, to put myself in a better position to have a better day.
Yeah.
I don't eat a lot of sugar right before I go to bed because it's impossible for me to wake up in the morning. I feel like I've been doped. I've learned the way, once you get to my age, you start to, if you're paying attention, learn the way things affect you and act accordingly, which is, don't make the same mistakes and expect different results.
Yep.
Eventually it just, so some of it really is just getting older and paying attention and getting wiser. But absolutely. Yeah. I can obsess. I mean, trust me, I will read an article about, Meghan Markle and find out what kind of lipstick she's using and spend $35 to get it and then put it in a drawer and never use it.
Yeah.
That's addiction, friends.
Yeah. A quick fun piggyback. How bad of an enabler is Amazon?
Well, okay. I would just like to preface this by saying there is no possible ethical consumerism in late stage capitalism.
No.
But Amazon sucks, and I try really hard not to give them money.
Yep.
So I try to get what.
Well, we all do.
No. Now I have Pete. So Pete gets stuff from Amazon.
Who's Pete?
Pete's my boyfriend.
Oh,
Pete's my roommate.
I thought it was like a website that I didn't know about. I was like, they're new Amazon?
Pete.com?
Pete.com?
Pete.com. And he gets stuff from Amazon all the time. So if I need something that I can't get anywhere else,
that is such manipulation.
Justifications and rationalizations are more important than sex. The big chill.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair. Where are we going? All right. So I know this is a part of my story and a part of a lot of people's stories. We come into recovery not necessarily seeking recovery. Mm-hmm. Like a lot of people get the nudge from the judge, whatever. Mm-hmm. And then we start recovering accidentally without our consent. So how can you speak to when did you recognize that you were recovering accidentally and things were changing in your mind or in your life sort of without your consent because you saw recovery working for you without you necessarily working for recovery?
I'm going to say, well,
right.
Just the way that surrender is not a one-time thing. There are surrenders all along the way. Mm-hmm. I knew that recovery was working in my life when I, had the relationships. That might be BS. Like, I know it happened sometime after Laura relapsed and Robin became my sponsor, and I started really working the program the way I was suggested, the way it was suggested to me. But I'm going to say that it wasn't until the pandemic that I really had an awareness of just how much I had fundamentally changed as a person. Mm-hmm. And if you remember, we go back to the magic thing, and I wanted something that was going to affect me without my consent. Yeah. Hello, recovery. Yeah. If I walked in the rooms as the person I was and heard myself speaking the way I speak today, I'd be like, who is this lunatic? Mm-hmm. That's never going to be me. That's not who I am. Yeah. But I mean, it took a long time. And that's the thing that I hate about this process. For me, anyway, it worked this way for me because I had the mental illness, because I took a decade off and kind of floated around on my broom for a while. I get that when we quit using, like, we immediately get a pay raise, and our lives become less messy because we don't make as much mess because we're not using, and so we're not doing the stuff that we do when we use. So we can hold a job and we can be around our family. We can, and that stuff is all great. Mm-hmm. And that stuff all happened for me. Yeah. And I had a job with the government, benefits, car, 15 years old, still runs. It's perfect. Everything's good. Paid for, no car payment. So my life was good. Family loved me, but there was still that inside of me thing that was still not okay. Mm-hmm. And so it was sometime after the whole Laura Robin thing. And I don't even remember, for all the things that I do remember the moment that it changed, I don't remember the moment that I realized this is really working for me. I think it might have been because all of a sudden people were asking me to sponsor them, and that had never happened before. Like in the beginning, I'd had like a sponsee here and a sponsee there, somebody with, I had a year and they had 6 months. So, or, pot was their drug of choice. And so that was unusual because they heard me say that and they're like, oh, somebody who has my story. But I realized that I must be sharing something that people are looking for, that I finally have a story that's reaching people.
Yeah.
Because you can see the recovery in me now where you couldn't before. I think you've known me now. You've known me long enough to know that even though we haven't been close the whole time, you've seen me.
Oh, yeah.
So now I'm one of the people
This Terri is very different than 2014 Terri.
So yeah, it's like the power of example thing, and I guess I own that in a way that I never did before, and totally get the, when people say, why are you still going to meetings? Well, because I have a responsibility to give back what was so freely given to me. Mm-hmm. And by the way, here's one of my pet peeves. How can you steal something that's freely given? Yeah. People talk about NA thieves. I was like, who are these people that steal things that are freely given? Mm-hmm. Because I come to NA because I'm grateful and I want to share with people that this stuff is possible, even for people who are too smart for this thing, too sophisticated for this thing, people who, don't have exciting stories, who have high bottoms, whose using was boring. I still needed this program. I still needed this process. Yeah. And I'm so grateful. Yeah. So I keep coming back to give back what was so freely given to me. Yeah. And it's funny you say that because, like, in my middle years of recovery, like 3, 4, 5, 6, whatever, right around that time, because I had some friends by that point who left and were quote unquote those NA thieves, and I totally had that mindset. I was like, you're just exhibiting thievery. Like I was like, you took what was freely given, like you said, and then you stopped giving it back, and your life is better now. So you're like, okay, well, I'm just going to do my own thing, and I copped a resentment, 100%. And then what happened? Did they end up using again and wrecking their lives? Yeah. Well, no, but they're still out there using, and their shit is somehow manageable. See, I have the people like that too. The people who left recovery and their shit is somehow still manageable, and they piss me off. Yeah. But I just have to know that's not me. Yeah. And again, I know that I'm an addict. Yeah, but it took the day after a major holiday in the grocery store. Yeah, but I was pissed off at those people. That's what we do. For being an atheist. That's what we say. You use come back. We're addicts. That's what we do. We use every day we stay clean. It's a fucking miracle. Mm-hmm. We use come back. There's no shame in that. Yep. So why am I mad at people who come to meetings and then stop coming to meetings? Yeah. That's what we do. And I didn't get that back then. Complacency is a thing. Mm-hmm. And I've learned a healthy detachment from okay, they're doing their thing. Which is again back to how do you maintain relationships with people who are in and out. Like I love people when they come back and I'm there for them, but I'm not going to hang out with them when they're using. Oh yeah, Matt Stout. How long did we have to watch that? And now he's doing great. Is he? He's doing great. So that is so good to hear.
He makes me so happy.
Yeah, so he started a branch of a new fellowship, Drug Addicts Anonymous. Okay. Which is the first meeting of that kind here in Maryland. Okay. And he's up in Hampton doing his thing. He's got a couple years clean. Oh, that's so good. And he broke his cycle because he kept just doing the same thing and same thing. I'm so glad to hear that. Yes. That's like in my crowd, our Matt Stout was Dale. I don't know if you know Dale F. Yeah. But he was, so that's Dale. He just kept going back out there and kept going back out there. And he would come back or go to jail and get a couple years clean. And he's one of those assholes that kind of just accidentally just shows up and works his way into your heart. And you're like, you bastard, stop killing yourself. He just happens to still be alive, unlike Brian and Shaggy. Yes. Yeah. But yeah, and good for him. Love him. All right. Well, great. Yeah, that's great to hear. Yes. Excellent. Do you have any more questions? Mm-hmm. I don't have any more questions. So we would like to thank Terri for joining us today. Thank you for having me. Absolutely. We want to give you another quick minute to talk to anybody out there who's struggling, needs to hear that push, message of hope, whatever. What do you have to say to them? I mean, like I said, I'm the person who wants to talk to you if you're too smart, if you've taken too many comparative religion classes and you're not about God, if you
Don't think your using is bad enough. You know, if you're miserable, it's bad enough. It doesn't have to be, you know, homelessness and degradation and selling yourself on the street. It doesn't have to be that. That's where the yet comes in. Yet means you're eligible too. And that's how I know I'm an addict. Did I just blow you away again?
Yes!
Mm-hmm. Damn, this is awesome. You're eligible too. I haven't done it yet. My story will be any of the crazy stories I hear in the rooms. All I have to do is pick up. So if you're still in a relatively good place where you still have a place to live and you're not in jail, but you are wrecking cars or you're wrecking people's nights worrying about you or whatever, if people are worried about you, it's for a reason. And if you're listening to an episode of Podcast Recovery, it's not an accident.
Mm-hmm. Yep. You didn't just stumble upon this.
You don't just... People who don't have problems with this stuff don't just accidentally end up in meetings. And more people have problems with this stuff than we as a society are willing to admit.
Absolutely.
So, there you go. There's my elevator pitch.
Fantastic. All right, here at Podcast Recovery, we are aiming to expand the scope of support for recovering addicts. Accessibility and convenience of helpful services is paramount to combating addiction. We work to bring the message of recovery to every addict, wherever and whenever it is needed. We believe that a powerful voice of recovery should be obtainable, practical, and at the touch of a button. Every addict deserves to hear a message of hope, and Podcast Recovery is here to provide it. All right, everybody, thanks for joining in again. Go to our Twitter, our Facebook, our Instagram for more information about us. Go to podcastrecovery.com. Like, share, subscribe. If you'd like to become part of our family, please go to our Patreon because we are self-supporting and need help keeping the mics on. So please help us out with that. But most importantly, above all of that, Carly,
Stay safe and stay clean.
Yep.